We are back, and today we are celebrating the fall off of Sneasler. Now, I was not a big fan of Sneasler in the Regulation H metagame. In the Regulation G metagame, I could care less because Sneasler is absolute dog water in the Regulation G metagame. It is just not a great Pokemon. We're going to talk about that. We're going to explain why Sneasler fell off, the various things that happened between Regulation H and Regulation G that caused this, and why I knew this was going to happen. But before we get into that, if you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications. And I do want to give a quick shout out to our brand new YouTube channel members. Those would be Oh No, It's Cody, Tactical Hot Dog, and Martin Viegas. If you guys want a shout out at the top of my video, become a new YouTube channel member, you'll get a shout out in the next one. Also, if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon, there's other options there. Both of those get you access to the Discord where we talk about Pokemon, team build, etc. And yeah, there's a bunch of cool benefits in there if you guys want to support. So, let's get into it. Sneasler. What does Sneasler do? Sneasler has Dire Claw, right? Dire Claw is very annoying. It has that 50% chance to poison, sleep, or paralyze the target. You already know how this works. We all hate Sneasler, right? The issue with Sneasler wasn't just Dire Claw, although it could have been just Dire Claw. It's the fact that Sneasler in the Regulation H metagame, I'm going to mix up my H's and G's, by the way, in this video, just because I'm expecting it to be the previous format, but it's actually the next. You get what I mean. So, 120 speed, 130 attack, right? Not very bulky. The main issue with this is that in the Regulation H metagame, Sneasler was actually considered extremely fast because the jump between Sneasler and the next Pokemon was 6 points because it was Talonflame. And Talonflame wasn't on like every single team, although Talonflame did have a good Sneasler matchup. And then the next Pokemon was basically just Dragapult. And Dragapult wasn't on every team either. Except for at the beginning of the format where we saw like Sneasler, Dragapult. They worked better together than they did against each other. It was really annoying. So, what happened in Regulation H to make Sneasler this strong? Well, it was the banning of a bunch of important Pokemon, from Tornadus to Urshifu Rapid Strike to Miraidon to Calyrex Shadow to Zamazenta, right? Losing all of these restricted Pokemon and also all of these just legendary Pokemon made Sneasler so much easier to pilot because the power level was so much lower. Let me jump to a Regulation H tournament real quick. Here we have the results of the Perth Regional Championships, which is one of the last regionals that we saw prior to Regulation G coming back. And what do we see? We see Sneasler won the whole thing, right? We see Sneasler on this like balancy team with like, Blood Moon Ursaluna, Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Dragonite. Scroll down a little bit further. What do we see? We see more Sneasler. This is the Psy-Spam version of Sneasler. Well, not Psy-Spam. It's like the Psychic Sea version of Sneasler. We see Sneasler on Dondozo Balance. We see Sneasler on Psy-Spam. We see Sneasler on regular balance. We see Sneasler on everything. Sneasler. There's Sneasler everywhere. And the reason for this is because everything was so weak in this metagame. So many Pokemon just got hit by Incineroar. Not Incineroar, just got hit by Sneasler. Archaludon was a Pokemon that did not appreciate Sneasler because it would have to Terra to avoid getting hit by close combat coming off that 130 base attack stat. It would deal significant damage and chunk it before it could get like many stamina boosts off. It would usually have to Terra into Grass or Fairy, which meant that Sneasler could cover for that by just going for its Dire Claw. And then at that point, what do? It goes to sleep, it gets paralyzed, it gets poisoned, and all those are awful for Archaludon. It would prefer to get paralyzed out of all three of those things because getting poisoned means that your stamina boosts aren't going to take you as far. Incineroar would have to tear in front of Sneasler. It was annoying. It would Ursaluna would have to tear in front of Sneasler. It would have to tear into Ghost because then it would be immune to the close combat. But then you also have to think about like, okay, well, if I tear into Ghost and they go for the Dire Claw and I haven't gotten my Flame Orb yet, I might get put to sleep, I might get paralyzed, and I might get poisoned. All three of those are worse than getting burned when it comes to Ursaluna. And of course, regular Ursaluna, it doesn't care quite as much, but Blood Moon Ursaluna definitely cares a lot more about it because Blood Moon Ursaluna would tend to be Terra normal, so even defensively, it couldn't tear out of this. Sneasler also was just like one of the faster Pokemon in the metagame because of its ability Unburden. Basically, if it lost its Focus Sash, it would end up getting a boost in speed to the point where it'd be like, what, 378 speed, right? Which is ridiculous because that is faster than a lot of Pokemon under Tailwind. So like if you get it down to its Focus Sash, it just gets the boost, and then it outspeeds things under Tailwind, even though, you try to go for speed control. These are also had a number of like coverage options that it would run, mostly Throat Chop, because Throat Chop was like really useful for catching things like Golden Go, and that was especially good on those Psychic spam teams where it would want to run the Psychic Seed, because then not only can it eat a hit from Golden Go, but it two-shots it. At that point, it would also run like, Terra Stellar, and Terra Stellar Sneasler was a whole different beast. It was really difficult to deal with. The main issue with Sneasler, beyond its ability to just be this like super fast, really powerful physical attacking Pokemon, was the fact that Dire Claw did have that RNG to it. There were a lot of games where you would go, okay, I'm in a position where I am probably going to lose if I don't get a sleep or paralysis. And then you would go for the Dire Claw, and you had a pretty decent chance of getting sleep or paralysis, all things considered. Meaning that, like Sneasler, its single Dire Claw was a win condition in some situations. And that was really annoying, because you could position well around the whole team, and then you would just get Dire Clawed, and it's like, okay, well, now my Incineroar got put to sleep, or now my Rillaboom got put to sleep, even though I defensively tear it in front of it, so I wouldn't end up getting hit by the super effective Dire Claw. That was annoying, right? Regulation G, Sneasler is nowhere to be seen. And that's for good reason. Like, there is not a very, very good reason to use Sneasler in this metagame at all. And it has like entirely to do with the tools that were previously banned in Regulation H just returning. So let me explain which tools exactly make it hard to justify using Sneasler. So also, I just want to point something out. I tried to find like a single usage for Sneasler on just like I tried to find like one person using Sneasler on like just like this like larger Regulation G tournament that happened online, because you can search for like, Pokemon usage on Lab Mouse, right? And there's literally nothing. Like, not a single person in this tournament said, hey, maybe I should use Sneasler. And you know why? It's because there are so many better options, and the metagame is just so much more hostile to it right now. So for one, a reason you don't really need to be using Sneasler is because it's not one of like 3 good fighting types in the format. Main reason you don't need to be using Sneasler is Urshifu. Urshifu Rapid Strike is a Pokemon which hits just as hard as Sneasler. It has 130 base attack, but it also hits technically harder because its signature move of Surging Strikes is not 80 base power. It is what, 25 times 3 times 1.5, that's like 112, I think. So 112 base power Surging Strikes, very, very difficult to switch in on, especially when you consider that it always crits, and you can run like the Mystic Water to boost it even further. This Pokemon with like Terra Water in Rain, or even like just without Rain, is one of the most consistently broken Pokemon in the metagame. It's won the World Championships, I believe, every year since it's been legal, and that's for pretty good reason. Another reason that you don't need to be using Sneasler as your fighting type is because we have the return of Iron Hands. Now, Iron Hands is a Pokemon which does something that Sneasler did quite well. It was Fake Out, but also Iron Hands is bulky enough into the Sneasler matchup where if like the opponent has a Sneasler and you have an Iron Hands, you should be pretty confident that you're probably going to win that exchange, since Wild Charge and like Heavy Slam deals some pretty significant damage to the Sneasler. You're also 154 HP, 108 defense. Like, it is not breaking through you. It would have to get like any one of its like Dire Claw BS statuses to even break through you. So that is like a pretty good reason. Also, should I mention with Urshifu that Urshifu not only is able to run like the Choice Scarf set to like get that same speed tier that Sneasler was capable of, but now it's also able to hit through Protect and not care about Intimidate drops. That's huge, right? It makes it just so much more hostile for Sneasler in the format, because it's just like, okay, Sneasler into Urshifu. Not only does Sneasler get outsped by like Scarf Urshifu, but it also just dies to Surging Strikes, since Surging Strikes bypasses Sneasler's Focus Sash option. So that is very difficult for this mon to deal with, right? Other things that make it hard for Sneasler to play. I would argue that one of the main reasons that people really liked Sneasler, besides it just being fundamentally a good Pokemon, Dire Claw, Close Combat, that speed tier, that attack stat, those were good, right? But one of the main reasons people advocated for using Sneasler was because of the Dire Claw sleep chance. The fact that you had like a 17% chance to like sleep a Pokemon on any turn is ridiculous. That is absolutely broken. Miraidon being like the number one restricted in the format in this very moment, and since we're coming off of the World Championship win that it had, being like just extremely popular, having Hadron Engine, which sets Electric Train, means that Sneasler is not going to be able to sleep anything if Miraidon is on the field. Beyond that, people thought that like, okay, maybe you could put like Electric Seed, right, Sneasler, next to Miraidon, and then like, oh, that's a threat because you have like this close combat mon, you have like the Dire Claw poison to deal with like opposing fairy types, like if Terra Fairy Fluttermane wants to like try to attack your Miraidon. But no, because you have Scarf Urshifu next to it, and Scarf Urshifu would be able to do that job just as well, especially if you're going to plan on burning a Terra anyways, right? You just defensively Terra into water and KO the Fluttermane. But the thing with that is that Sneasler, if you pair it with Miraidon, you lose your best Dire Claw BS, right? You're not able to sleep anything. So that's just like a huge issue for it. Another reason that Sneasler is actually pretty difficult to run, and I would argue this is probably the biggest reason, is actually Tornadus. So Tornadus is a Pokemon that is pure flying type. It likes to run Tailwind, meaning that speed control is a lot more accessible in this format, and it likes to run the move Bleak Wind Storm, which is super effective against Sneasler. But the biggest issue with the Sneasler Tornadus matchup isn't even these two things. It's these two things combined with the fact that the Covert Cloak is probably Tornadus's best item in this metagame, and when it's not running Covert Cloak, it's running like Rocky Helmet. So both of Tornadus's items just naturally make it very strong into Sneasler, because Sneasler isn't able to fake out Tornadus, Sneasler isn't able to get any Dire Claw status against Tornadus, and because Tornadus tends to run like more of a bulky set to make sure it can stay on the field longer, it's pretty easy for Tornadus to get that second Bleak Wind Storm off, even if like Sneasler gets like the Focus Sash unburdened. So yeah, like Tornadus is just like actually just a very, very frustrating Pokemon for this guy to deal with, and especially when you consider the fact that Tornadus and Urshifu are almost always paired with each other when Urshifu just exists, right? It makes it so difficult for Sneasler to play against either one of them. I would say the next most difficult restricted for Sneasler to play around is actually probably going to be Calyrex Shadow, and you might think that this one's kind of weird because we did mention that Sneasler had Throat Chop. But the thing is, in this metagame, Sneasler's probably not a Psychic Seed mon. Sneasler's going to have to be like a Focus Sash mon to make sure it can get things done game to game. And when Calyrex Shadow's running around, who also likes to run like Focus Sash or like a Life Orb or something, and outspeeds Sneasler, and also has access to Expanding Force, a move which can one-shot Sneasler, and of course Astral Barrage, it makes it very difficult for Sneasler to play, where previously it was like the fastest Pokemon in the format, save for Dragapult. Now this guy is here with 30 more base speed on top of it, being able to outpace it and go for one-shots. Now, you also have to keep in mind that like Sneasler isn't just competing on a team for like that fighting type slot. Also Zamazenta Crown is like very good in Sneasler. You can just like Heavy Slam it, and you don't really care about close combat because you're Zamazenta Crowned. I don't care if it's super effective, right? Here's the other thing. Sneasler has to compete for its items, right? You're not going to run Electric Seed if you don't have, a Miraidon on the team, and you're also not going to run it next to Miraidon, because are you really going to click Dire Claw without the chance to sleep? No. You're not going to run it with Psychic Seed as often because there aren't as many Psy-Spam teams in Restricted, and the Focus Sash, its next best item, is probably going to be taken up by one of the other numerous Pokemon in this format that want to run that Focus Sash. If we take a look at like a recent Regulation G tournament, we can see that like Chenpau's around. Chenpao really likes that Focus Sash. What else is the Focus Sash? I think this one was Sash Urshifu. Yeah, you're competing with Urshifu for the Focus Sash, Chenpao for the Focus Sash. On this team, I believe it's Urshifu again. Yeah, Urshifu with the Focus Sash. It's hard to find the item available that Sneasler wants to run. And you could say that maybe you could just run like the you could run like the White Herb to get like full value out of Sneasler, because then if you close combat, you get like the unburden boost, and you don't really care about your defense drops, and also you can like switch in on, or you can have like an Intimidate switch in on you, and then you lose your attack, but then the White Herb activates and then you get unburden. But that still is making it so you get one shot by these faster restricteds. Calyrex Shadow is now just one shotting you because you don't have either A, the defensive boost from Psychic Seed, plus a Terra, obviously you would need that to survive Calyrex Shadow, or B, the Focus Sash. Like, you're just going to drop now. So that is all very difficult for it. And I mean, like, just the general metagame is just hostile to it at the moment. Like I said, Zamazenta doesn't actually care too much about Sneasler because of its just natural bulk, but also it's flanked by these Pokemon that make it really difficult for Sneasler to play the game. Sneasler gets outsped by Chien-Pao, and it also gets outsped by Fluttermane. Fluttermane, while it isn't like a 100% Sneasler check, it is a Pokemon which outpaces Sneasler, and when you pair it with Pokemon with access to Fake Out or also just outspeed Sneasler, like a Moonblast into a Sucker Punch, even if, well, not Sucker Punch, a Moonblast into like an Icicle Crash is going to like KO Sneasler, right? Another thing is the format's just generally fatter. Like I already mentioned Iron Hands being around. Iron Hands is a Pokemon that can naturally sponge up those hits, but something that I haven't talked about is Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt's natural bulk makes it really easy for it to actually tank these hits, right? So Raging Bolt is a Pokemon which is really funny because, like, let me compare Raging Bolt to Lunala for all you guys if you've never seen this before, right? Lunala, 137 HP. This guy's 125 HP, right? 89 defense, 91 defense, 107 special defense, 89 special defense, 197 speed, 75 speed, right? So the bulk is similar. The speed doesn't really matter, right? But the offensive stat, 137 and 137, what were they doing there? I have no idea what they were thinking. My cat just ran all the way across the room. He's been very annoying this morning. I've had to pause the recording like 8 times to just go like calm him down and keep him from running around. But I've given up at this point. Sorry, literally as I said that, I had to pause the recording because my cat decided to knock over something off my shelf and I had to just clean that up for the next 30 minutes. But I remember where I was. Raging Bolt. Oh my god. Dude, it has been so frustrating trying to get this video done because the cat just keeps like knocking things over. I don't know what's up with him today, but I don't know. I'll play with him later and get him to calm down. So, Raging Bolt, it can just tank hits, right? Raging Bolt with 125 HP, 91 defense. It's not as worried as like the average regulation H metagame was, or as the average regulation H Pokemon was, right? So if we pop it in like the damage calculator, we can see Sneasler, Paradark Unburden into like a Raging Bolt, right? Let's just go with like offensive max HP, max attack, or max special attack, right? Dark Claw is doing like 35% to 41, and Close Combat is doing like 50%. And that's like for no defense investment. If like we're looking at a bulkier Raging Bolt, like one that hits like, I don't know, 116 special attack and then just dumps the rest into defense, like we hit like 128. Or I think it's 124 is actually the number. Yeah. So I mean, hit like 124. You see that Close Combat's doing like less than half. So it isn't able to like pick up the one shots it was able to prior. But yeah. Basically, like the whole metagame is just a lot more frustrating for this Pokemon to play in. It has just like horrible matchups across the board into a lot of Pokemon, and there's not really a reason to use it over the likes of other fighting types, you know, like Iron Hands and Urshifu Rapid Strike. And that's maybe the point I wanted to get across in this video. Like that's the reason like we don't see it getting used at all in Regulation G. And there was a lot of people coping where it's like, oh yeah, you know, like people used Regulation H and they realized that Sneasler's a broken Pokemon, so obviously it'll get used in Regulation G when it comes back. Well, they weren't right. It was pretty wrong. Like they were pretty objectively wrong. But yeah. Anyways, I have no idea what else I want to talk about because I just spent the last 30 minutes cleaning up a mess my cat made. What do you guys think about Sneasler in the Regulation H metagame or Regulation G metagame? You know, if you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Once again, check out the YouTube membership link down below. Shout out to Oh No, It's Cody, Tactical Hot Dog, and Martin Viegas. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Bye.